Yep, I call the Finance Committee meeting to order. First order of business is, hold on, maybe I should get the right one. Would be, yeah, no, I just had it on the meeting. Let the record reflect all members are present. The first action is approval of the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
You bet.
All right. So then we're moving on to finance update.
Or staffing update.
Staffing
take
update,
that.
yeah.
I'll start here and then Bonnie can add and answer questions. So, yeah, I feel like we should have soot on our faces right now because we've been budget scrubbing so much the last couple months. But we're here to present a possible option we've been looking at related to Parks, Rec, and Senior Services that would essentially, what we would believe, it would increase our programs, it would reduce our costs, and it would increase revenue. So those sound like three good things.
You don't often hear those together.
Yeah, so let me lay some of this out. And I just want to mention, this is looking at, creatively looking at the department-wide, sharing resources and maximizing efficiencies. And this is something that, so Bonnie's been, really digging deep into our parks programs, and she has, extensive experience in the department and, is using that knowledge and understanding to really bring forward some good proposals. So, so as you know, Parks and Rec is essentially, we have kind of three sub pieces. We have recreation, we have events and facilities, and then we have our senior center. And so some of these programs can be seasonal. Obviously recreation is very busy in the summertime, events is busier in the summertime, and then some of that cools down in the winter time. We have less rentals, all that stuff. And so what we're looking at is essentially pooling these staff, bringing them more together so that they can overlap functions and really kind of, and we always talk about breaking down the silos, right? But integrating these three pieces of the department better to maximize what we can do. And so one of the pieces of this proposal would be that we'd be moving our event staff, our rental staff up to the senior center. So they're currently housed at the marina right now. And so we would take them from there, move them up to the senior center. That would allow them to participate in the management and the day-to-day operations of the senior center. And essentially what that would do is we're looking at increasing the hours that the senior center is open, including the days of the week as well. And we could do that by adding existing staff. We wouldn't be adding new staff, we'd just be moving staff. And then also, so we have temporary and seasonal employees that are really for each one of those three pieces. And what we'd like to do is essentially train them and then schedule them so that they can work for all three. So we could have our event staff working at the senior center, we could have our event staff doing recreation programs as needed. We could have our recreation people being able to come up to the senior center and assist, right? So there's it's not like, oh, I only do recreation. These employees are in the parks department, they can do all three of these functions. And so I'm sure there'll be some questions about, what those impacts are. One of the kind of the bigger piece of this would be that we may have the ability to end our contract with Wesley to manage the senior center by bringing that piece in-house. And so, when we presented on this recently, that when we switched from city employees to Wesley employees, we did save money based on historical costs of managing the senior center. We think if we're pooling our staff, using existing staff, that we can actually save money over our Wesley contract. And I think what we've learned at the senior center is the seniors don't care who's signing checks, right? They don't care if it's Wesley, they don't care if it's the city. What they want is You know, they want their familiar faces and they want good services. And so what we'd be looking at is retaining our existing employees, whether they're currently working for Wesley or, you know, trying to keep the same staff. But then also dramatically increasing our options at the senior center, where with longer hours, more activities, more programming, even additional days that we aren't currently open. So these are all kind of, I mean, it's a lot to think about. Bonnie's really kind of worked through all this and presented it to us, and we think that you know, just through some internal reorganizations and reassignments of staff, and then the one piece would be ending the contract. That would really be the discretion of the council. So that's kind of a overview. If there's any questions.
So I got a couple, and then I'll, you got questions, Stu?
I just have a couple.
Go ahead.
I just, if we end our contract with Wesley, does that mean for, what does that look like for the services and the events and that kind of stuff? And how well attended are the events? I mean, I'd like to know that too.
So just legally, the Wesley contract only requires 30-day notice of termination. We have a great relationship with Wesley, so, you know, we wouldn't, this isn't due to a lack of, you know, performance or anything like this. I mean, this would be something we'd talk to them about and explain the rationale. And we want to maintain that, you know, a great relationship. This is just really about efficiencies and you know, some options to use existing employees to provide what we believe is expanded service. And then Bonnie, do you want to talk about kind of existing engagement and hours and all that stuff at the senior center?
Sure. Currently, the center's only open Monday through Thursday. They are closed on Fridays. They do lunches Monday through Wednesday from Catholic Community Services, and Thursday Wesley provides lunches for them. So they would, you know, we feel that we still have a relationship with Wesley in using their services when we need to or when we can. By pulling the staff together, we feel we can be open 7 days a week and offer weekend and evening options. I mean, who wouldn't want a Friday night happy hour at the senior center with some music and, you know. Right now we have great programs. I mean, Novi does a great job in coordinating outings and, you know, out to lunches and trips and things like that. What we're lacking is like after lunch programming and evening programming and some morning programming. So great trips, great out to lunches, and what we have is great. It's just not a lot. And I think of it from my perspective, you know, I am a senior, and what would I like to do there? So I'm kind of coming out from that angle as well. So think about all those happy hours. Anyway, so we feel like just adding the additional staffing can provide way more, and just brainstorming. We've been brainstorming just tons of ideas and things that we can get those seniors involved in.
And some of these are things that we used to do.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
That, you know, through COVID and through contracting out, you know, things have changed a little bit. And part of that is kind of a reduction in engagement.
Yes.
Normandy Park, it used to be, you know, Normandy Park used to financially contribute, and their residents would attend fairly frequently, and they don't contribute anymore, and their residents really aren't engaged with the senior center. So, you know, creating more options and more activities, you know, should ultimately create more engagement.
Correct.
So a couple questions. Is this a reduction in FTEs and seasonal employees, or is it the same, just circling the pool, the savings coming from canceling the contract?
Same staff. We actually have a senior events manager position that is currently unfilled, and we have Sharice's position right now. We haven't filled that. And then, yeah, so it's combination of the filling the positions that we have unfilled right now with our staff, and then if we break the contract, I kind of gave a little bit of a layout here. If we break the contract, there's a little bit of a savings from what we pay Wesley to what we would pay an employee. So there's a little bit of savings. So in net savings could be anywhere between 160 to 170,000 a year based on this model. You know,
Yeah,
benefits dependent. And
Yeah.
stuff. And also a savings in taking two departments and combining operating expenses. professional services, communication, janitorial. You know, all those are being housed under one location now rather than two, so there's a savings there. That's unknown. We don't know what that looks like at the moment.
Okay.
But
And I
no,
think-
no staff
Yeah.
eliminations at all, adding actually.
All right. And then you mentioned revenue increases. I know you guys are doing more efforts to obviously rent the facilities more and expand the operations, and you're talking about rate changes and stuff like that. Is that the summation of where you think you're gonna get the revenue increase, or is there something I didn't mention?
There is more to that. So yeah, so that's in the events piece, right? We're looking at, you know, activating more of our buildings. We're also, you know, in discussions with the Highline School District about, you know, taking over part of the beach park. But the big one, and what was really telling, is that when we were going through the senior center budget, their expenses versus their revenue, they were making revenue about 15% of their total expenditures. I mean, it was next to nothing. And so, you know, we think if we're offering activities at night that you buy a ticket to, if we're offering, you know, different programming that we can get people to attend that they'd be willing to pay for, but that also is fun and you know, they want to be there, that those, the subsidy would not be nearly what it is right now, because really we're collecting it was something like $20,000 a year. And we think we can do a lot better than that if we offer better programming.
Yes, exactly.
Councilmember Harris?
Thank you. Yeah, you don't have to sell me. It's strategically, it's the right thing to do. And, you know, my fellow Irish citizen over at the marina, you have these staff synergy. I mean, basically everybody learns multiple jobs. Where are people gonna sit? I mean, do you have to build office space, or is that kind of a?
There is ample space up there. There are 2 offices. One is in the back area. The other one is kind of off. There's a back room. You're familiar, you know, that little.
No, I just, I do,
And then-
yeah.
There's another office by the kitchen, office area, and then the front area can have 2 to 3 computers. A lot of staff wouldn't be necessarily working at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the whole idea of being open, you know, 7 days a week, is not all staff would be there every day, all day, right? You'd have to space it out. Some would do Sunday through, you know, Wednesday or Thursday. The other ones would do Wednesday through Saturday, whatever that model looked like. So not everybody would be in the building at the same time, but still enough coverage to run the programs, be there for, you know, the customers and things like that.
No, I'm just, in the broad strokes, just in terms of events writ large between the field house and the beach park and everything. The only question I have, you opened with something about soup, and I had no idea what reference that is.
I was thinking like chimney scrubbing or something, where, you know, we're scrubbing the budget. That's what the council wanted us to do.
What does soup have to do with it?
Suit.
Oh, I still don't get it, but
We're cleaning, right? It's dirt. We have dirt on our faces.
Well, it's good, strong word.
Yeah.
You know, obviously, no matter what, levy or not, we have to be real creative and get a lot of options on the table, so I think you guys are onto something, so good job.
wait, I got one.
Go ahead, Councilmember
one
Harris.
thing, really quick. Actually, Novi, some of the events she put together are pretty awesome.
They're great.
And so, I mean, I'm sure we have the same or even better talent and so forth. I just wanted to put that out there, that they're really good, and I think that's the level. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So was there more staffing update stuff?
That is it. Just,
That's
yeah,
it?
that was just specific to that.
All right, then we move on to the business license fees.
I actually have a page to hand out as well. So I did some math right before the meetings that I thought would be helpful for the discussion. So, as mentioned, you know, this is a budget update. So currently, budget-wise, we're having our budget meetings with the departments, and we're also looking for looking at revenue and revenue opportunities. And I have had it in the back of my mind to look at B&O taxes and business license fees. So I looked on both of those, looked at what's going on in the area, and we're not mentioning B&O taxes because finance is not recommending raising the rate because it's already, in comparison to the cities around us, high enough. So any higher would discourage business in Des Moines, in our opinion. So that leaves business license fees. And I think on page 4 is just a list of the cities around us, our neighboring cities, and you can see that there's a lot of different ways to do business licenses. And in general, the commercial business licenses for Des Moines, for in-city and out-of-city, make up 86% of the business licenses for the city, which is on that sheet that I gave you. So there's our, attached in the packet is the fee schedule for our business licenses. And it was my feeling that looking at our surrounding cities, that there was room, the city had room to increase the business license fee, yet still be pretty much less expensive than surrounding cities in general, depending on what city. But for example, Kent starts at $282. You know, our in-city is $75. So there's some comparable, but there seemed to be room for increases. So that's where we were thinking, where right now it's $75 for a commercial license in city, that we could raise that to $100. And then out of city, as you can see, that's almost 70% of our licenses. We could raise to $140. And if we were to use those rates on that sheet that I handed out, you can see just raising those two rates alone, based on 2023. If 2023 had those rates last year, it would have been an increase of $112,000. So I think it's something where it's for a business, yeah, it's $25 more a year. So it's not that much for, you know, one business in a year for $25 or, you know, a $40 increase. But it is something for the general fund that can, you know, increase from 300,000 to about 400,000. So that was just the thinking that was going on with that topic.
Couple questions. I saw the logic in it, and when you showed me the comparable cities, I thought an increase of that nature wasn't outdone. Home occupation, is that, what is that? Is that the B&B type thing, or?
No, I think that's just somebody having a business in their house. 'Cause
Oh, okay.
The Airbnb would be under just rental.
Because I didn't see, would be under what now?
Rental?
Rental?
Yeah.
Would, since we're gonna be doing an ordinance, and Tim, this would be something that you might wanna answer too. You know, we've talked about these share rentals, and I know there's several in the city, and I believe many unlicensed. You know, in what I've seen. Would it behoove us to, in the ordinance, create a detail out business license for those particularly, because we'd also probably assign fee structures for like number of lease calls or something like that. I just didn't know if that would be a different option than what we do on the rental properties.
So for short-term rentals, is that the question?
Yeah, calling short-term rentals
Yeah.
as a separate bucket
So
with a different structure.
generally what we've seen in other model ordinances is that short-term rentals are required to get just a general business license, and then they get a short-term rental permit from the city. And that separate permit has been anywhere from $100 to $1,000 or something like that. So that would be, you know, you'd have your general license, and then you have your specialty permit. And then that permit piece that would contain the specific regulations relating to short-term rentals.
Okay, well then obviously you've thought about this, and that's good. Just a question, because and particularly being 69% of it from out of the city, would $40 cause some people to fall out? Probably not, but
Yeah. 'Cause I would think they'd make that up in sales if they're coming in.
yeah, I just had to ask the question
Yeah.
because,
And then on that topic of out of sales, I think in the packet mentioned also, like, I think as Renton has like a 90-day temporary license. So we had, and I was thinking about that, because food trucks for business licensing has been an issue as far as categorization. So if we did something like that, then like that could cover the summer for a food truck. And there's, I think we only had like 72. It wasn't a significant, like, if they paid, say, $50 instead of 140, it wasn't material. It wasn't really that material to the overall revenue. So we wouldn't really be losing a lot of money if they had like a temporary license, and then we didn't have to spend staff time figuring out what.
Yeah, so
what they're
speaking
up
of
to.
temporary licenses, there are something that maybe might be even shorter term?
We could, yeah. I just went with 90 because I figured.
Yeah,
maybe
no, I'm
it's been
saying
summer, but,
food trucks, you buy it for 50, but
yeah.
a weekend, a 3-day is 25 or something
Right.
like that. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's a possibility.
And then I guess we'll talk about the types of business licenses in a second, because it looked like a few were passé. Like
Yeah,
listed as Panoram and Cabaret. I understand what they are. Panoram's like a jukebox, right?
yeah.
So,
But would it apply to DJs?
no, the Panoram is a little, different. The Panoram is unfortunately, I've had some experience with this, doing licensing. Matt's laughing now too, because he has to. So adult entertainment facilities have these booths where you put money in and you get to watch the movie, and they call that a Panoram.
Oh, right.
And so there is one store in the city that has a number of these panorams that they have to get licensed every year. So yeah, so we still have those. I mean, I think the cabaret piece might be something that we could look at. But yeah, there it is. I think this sheet kind of gives a weird, it gives kind of a different impression of the city when you read what all of our licenses are.
Yeah.
That like half of them are for adult entertainment stuff. So maybe we could look at kind of just creating a fee schedule for our regular businesses and then having a link or something to specialty businesses.
Or the moral quality of our culture.
Yeah.
Could I get that sheet? 'Cause I didn't get
Oh, did you, oh, I'm sorry.
the panorama thing.
Oh, it's in the packet.
Page 5.
I'm
Part of the packet, so you wouldn't have gotten it here.
Yeah.
Was there?
Here, this is
I
it.
printed it out, and was there an update?
No, no, it was on there. Yeah.
This was updated after the original was.
I printed out the, okay, cool, thank you.
While you're, do you have any comments or questions? Councilmember Harris?
Yeah, I noted that the majority of the cities in your excellent comparison have a distinction by head count. And what is the current theory as to, pluses and minuses?
In, as far as doing an employee count?
I mean, is there any, I don't know, is there a reason why or why not? I mean, it's not like we have, like General Motors assembly.
Right, and I think that's the reason we don't do it, is because we tend to have small businesses, or smaller businesses here. But, I mean, SeaTac and I think, yeah, Federal Way, I think they just have larger businesses. Not sure if they're charging for just the impact of the travel and employee, for that, but, that's not been what we've used.
No,
But,
I don't
yeah.
want to be awkward, but we do have 2 full-service grocery stores, and I just wonder if Normandy Park, they've got QFC. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're looking for direction from the committee here, I would say that raising them up as a revenue source, again, costs are way up.
Yeah.
And we have to find ways to get revenue. I think it's a creative way, and every 100 grand counts from, what the cuts might be. So, would you guys concur with that?
I would just ask if, because Normandy Park is a small, maybe they had it's a small thing, but you know, every $1,000 helps.
I think,
That's all.
yeah, so I think the consensus is that keep moving forward, and obviously you bring it before council for approval, so I think we're okay.
Okay.
And the additional information Councilmember Harris requires.
This is great, though. Thank you.
All right, then moving on to the general fund.
Okay, so I figured, I didn't write any highlights, but we can go through it. Next week, we'll be presenting the second quarter financial report. So this is kind of a sneak peek. So operating revenues through June 30th were $13.2 million. Total expenditures were a little over $12.5 million. So we're actually in the black, a little over $657,000. We can talk about the highlights, and that's good news. I mean, if I had known at the end of last year that we'd be at the end of June ahead of the game, of course I would take that. However, having said that, and what'll be in the quarterly report is that that's largely driven by one-time funds supporting the general fund. So in the quarterly report, you'll see a schedule that breaks out the structural revenue and expenditures, and then also one-time revenue and expenditures. So we can have a clearer picture of what that looks like. Sales tax continues the same trend that we've been seeing, where most categories are growing, but construction continues to drag the overall sales tax totals down to we're kind of flat. Still through June. One-time sales tax, I did want to mention, since we're in budget season, because when we do budgets, it's always a discussion of whether or not the general fund is going to retain that money or send it to the one-time sales tax fund for capital projects. I think it was at the last meeting that I made a comment that I was unaware of any projects coming down the pipe, and that the projects that were contributing were winding up. Since then, apparently we can have up to, I think, 5 projects coming down the pipe. So we look to, instead of not budgeting anything, we're probably going to budget to our best of our ability of what that one-time sales tax is. So it might be dragging a bit this year, but maybe in 25 and 26 it might come back.
Yeah, obviously you're looking at 2025,
Right.
2026 for that.
Right.
Okay.
So there's that. Let's see. And then on the expenditure side, there's a few things to mention. So if you look at the line for Parks, Recreation, and Senior Services, it shows that it's under budget for expenditures by $628,000. But part of that is that Parks maintenance was included on that line, which it does not belong on that line. So in the quarterly report, we have that broken out. So Parks maintenance, which is part of Public Works, they've been a bit low on staffing, so they're about 120,000 under budget for expenditures, and then Parks and Rec is more like 420,000 under expenditures. And most of the driver for if a department's under budget for expenditures is typically related to staffing. So police, for example, has been carrying 3 vacancies, so we haven't had an assistant chief, and we've had 2 patrol officers. And the same thing with Parks and Rec. This is only through June. Extra hires, they tend to hire a lot of them in the summer, so there's also a seasonal factor there. But mostly it's been staffing shortages and with a touch of seasonality is why the departments are so far under budget. And we're making our best effort to control costs as well.
And of course, the city manager administration,
Right.
legal, the city attorney, and HR is
Right.
shifts where you put
Right.
positions from other groups.
Yeah, correct.
I just want to make one point. When he says staffing shortages, other than police, generally our vacant positions are easy to fill.
Right.
We've just, we had projections in November of last year about what our budget was looking like. So to the degree that we have been able to, throughout the first 6 months of the year, we've been rolling vacancies as long as we can to save that money. So I think it's good. I mean, we're $1 million under our projected expenditures this year. And I think that's, you know, when we talk about, obviously we've said budget scrubbing a number of times, but it's something that we've, you know, when we created the finance committee, you know, it was because we saw issues on the horizon. And so we've been keeping positions vacant. We've been trying to save money, and that shows up here. So that's good. But I will say, though, that when you have vacant positions, you typically have employees doing 2 jobs, right? So it's not really sustainable, but it's, you know, we're doing what we can in the interim until we make some more structural changes.
Yeah, staffing shortage is maybe too dramatic a term, but we've had vacancies because, you know, departments have turnover and everything Tim said. And then one final note, just on the transfers out at the bottom, you'll see on the last line, there's $51,000 budget to be transferred to the Facility and Repair Replacement Fund. While working on the budget, we asked, what is that 51,000? Well, it turns out that that's a donation that was made in 2021 that was transferred to that fund in 2021, and for whatever reason, that amount got carried forward in the budget. So that's not going to be in the budget going forward, but there will be no expenditure there because it's just a budget error. So, but that's a general look at where we are through June.
I mean, with revenue being down 1%, but you've reduced the cost by 8%, that's good fiscal management. My compliments to you guys. It looks like us as a city council are one of the few that are exceeding our budget dramatically. Can I ask why that is? Is it because of numerous meetings, more than we expected, or is there additional training costs or travel costs?
I think it was mostly related to travel costs that maybe weren't, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think that, yeah, that maybe exceeded budget there. It's just travel and meals and I think conference costs and training. You know.
Okay. Questions from the rest of council? Councilmember Harris.
It's more rhetorical. We're certainly not unused to wearing multiple hats, right? I mean, you've done 3 jobs at a time sometimes, you know. My only, just rhetorical, how much stress is that? And is there a way to quantify, you know, maybe not, but just, you know, the differential between having people do multiple you know, this kind of current thing, and in the perfect world where you had like a one-to-one correspondence, you know, one person, one job kind of a, in other words, is this like kind of the efficient model going forward, having people, you know,
No, I think
juggling stuff, or is it better to just, is the goal to, and, you know,
if you have people doing too much or wearing too many hats, then of course they'll eventually burn out and probably leave, and then you have to hire someone new, and then you have to train them. So there's always a training cost associated with that turnover. And so when you retain people, maybe they get a COLA or a step increase, which might be a little more expensive, but you're saving on having to bring in someone totally new with no knowledge, and then having to train them, and then incurring all those costs.
no, yeah, I'm just wondering if just going forward, if there was a way to just, I just always go back to this notion I used to think of the people who worked here as being here literally forever.
Mm.
I mean, I call it like the Lauren Reinhold of the world, who'd be here, you know, 400 years plus or minus. And so I just, you know, I wonder just in terms of efficiency, or people's longevity and all of that stuff. I'm just something to think about, that's all.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, we're extremely lean right now. And then I think as a result of that, we've had a lot of turnover at the director level in the last year, because we have people that are getting to the retirement age, and then when they're doing multiple, you know, they're a director, but they're also doing kind of the day-to-day operation stuff. At that point, you start thinking about, you know, what life would be like without working, you know? And so so we've had that turnover. I think the other piece is, you know, performance, right? So if we had, you know, if our staff was too thin and we were getting emails, the council was getting emails saying, hey, the city hasn't come by and cleaned up this park, or the city hasn't, you know, met these essential services that the residents expect. I don't think we're to that level because I think we're still providing a really good service across all departments. But yes, people are working really hard and we have vacancies and the expectation is, you know, they can pick up the slack for a while, knowing that eventually those positions are gonna be filled. So that's, you know, there's always that, you know, as long as the position is in the budget, you know, there's an expectation that it'll be filled. And because of budget cuts and because we're a small city, we don't have a bunch of extra positions, right? So.
Any more questions, comments on that? Finance Committee, I spoke with Tim and Jeff, and the next one we're scheduled to have is the 5th of September, which is also going to be a study session primarily focused on the budget. We talked about it, and asked Jeff, speaking of bandwidth and everything, that having a duplicative meeting really didn't benefit. So the call was we plan on canceling the September 5th Finance Committee meeting because it would be redundant to what's going to be discussed at the study session. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we felt that was the best choice for that. Is there anything else before we adjourn? Seeing none, thank you guys for your time. You're doing great work.
Thank you.